Firdaus Jahan, CCTA.
And I'm Marjorie McWee, and I'm a consumer or stakeholder.
Okay. And I've talked to her previously and suggested she come here, that she might be interested in being a member of this committee. She does live in Central County. So she's here today to check us out. And I believe the rule is if she comes 3 times, then she can apply.
Just one.
Oh, just one? So if she likes us at the end, we can...
We will send her, get her information, and send you an application.
Okay.
Count this as the meeting she attended.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. And if anyone else knows of somebody, particularly in the consumer category, I think it is that we need people. We're really quite short on consumers on this committee, which is theoretically a consumer committee. So the procedure is very simple. The person just comes, and if they've come one time, then they can fill out the application, as Peter just said, and then we will consider them. We interview them, right? I believe?
Yeah.
We do interview, okay. And so it's a pretty simple process, and I hope you all can come up with some people. They do have to be ADA, and they can either be disabled or, I guess, senior and disabled, right, Peter?
They don't have to be ADA. They can be either senior or disabled.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Is that all the information we need for that? Okay, perfect. So with that, we will ask if there are any members of the public that want to speak on items that are not on the agenda. Nope? Okay. Not at this time. And we'll start out with the roster, which is item number 1 on the agenda. And the reason I was mentioning what I did mention is that if you look down the list of representatives in the first section, you see that there are 6 vacancies. For representative, there are no alternates because there are not enough people who have applied to do that. And if you look under Antioch, I guess that they're the only ones under providers. Do they still provide?
No.
No, they don't. Should they be on the list?
We will discuss that on today's agenda.
Okie doke. And under social agency staff, we've never said that was just there in case there were some that wanted to. And then funding is not voting, but that's also there just in case. But the one where we really need it badly is Category A, paratransit riders. So if anyone knows of anybody, does anyone want to add anything to that agenda item right now? Does anybody have any ideas? Not that they have to know for sure right now. Okay, well, think about it. And if you know of somebody in your area, I think we have openings in all areas right now. So, okay. So with that, we will move on to the meeting schedule, item number 2 on the agenda. And that's on page 2-1, and it shows all of the meetings of the authority. If you go down to the very bottom, you'll see the Paratransit Coordinating Council, and you will see that today's meeting is, of course, September 16th, and there's no meeting next month, and the next meeting after that will be in November, and we do meet every other month. So any questions about that? Okay, super. Then we go to item number 3, which are the minutes or summary of actions, as it's called here. from July 15th. Are there any corrections to that?
I have a correction. This is Vi
Uh-huh.
Iwana. Item number 5.
Okay.
It's indicated here that I abstained on that vote, and I didn't. I voted to approve that motion.
Okay. Let's see, did that... Item number 5 was the Richmond... Where does it...
Yeah, so it's the Richmond, and we do have her down as an abstain, so we will change that.
Thank you.
It also, interestingly enough, says it was carried unanimously. So that part of it reflects the fact that she voted yes, right? Interestingly enough, okay. Okay. So are there any other corrections? Not seeing any, does anybody want to make a motion?
I will motion that we
Before
accept.
that, I think there is another
Do you
correction.
see another correction?
Yes.
Okay.
At the adjournment, it says 1:45. We adjourned at 3:45.
Yeah, we don't adjourn usually before we start.
No, I know, but we have it.
Right,
Yeah.
so that, okay, so thank you. And anything else from anyone?
I think we meant Hawaii time.
You were just trying to see if we had read the minutes, right? Okay, I heard several people make a motion. Michael, I did hear. Anyone else somebody want to change their motion to a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. So we're going along very well right here. And so the next item is formation of a bylaws review subcommittee. Can you tell us about this, Peter?
Yeah, so at the last meeting, we discussed some revisions that we need to do to the bylaws. One of them is to remove Antioch. And so I think what the group decided, this was when we were talking about other agenda items, so we couldn't really discuss it, that we needed to appoint a subcommittee to go through the bylaws and make any recommended changes. So,
Okay. So now we can do that right now. So
Yep.
if you're interested in coming, I guess it would mean coming to probably 1 or 2 meetings here for that purpose. Can you so indicate right now? Just raise your hand.
I need to say something, though.
Okay.
I'm available, but only if the meetings are held on a Monday, before the regular meetings. I now have employment during the rest of the week and will no longer be available to do subcommittees unless they're, like a half an hour, an
First,
hour.
I think we need to say congratulations. Oh.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we hear that. Anyone else interested? Okay, Kim? Anybody else? Three's enough. And the meeting time that Michael's available is the best. What?
everybody's already coming anyway for the PCC meeting,
Yeah.
so we'll just do it before that.
So did you raise your hand, Vi?
No, but I will.
Okay.
I will if it's tagged on ahead of this meeting.
Okay, so that's 4 people, I believe. Okay, that's enough. Okay, thank you, everybody. And so we'll start at, an hour before, maybe? Yeah. And if we do a good job, it'll just be that one meeting. So the way probably we can best do a good job is to have read the bylaws.
Yeah, so
Right
Fifi
before
will
that.
get those out to people on the subcommittee, and we'll go through it there. And then just the process would be once the PCC approves any revisions, and it would since PCC is an advisory committee of the authority has to approve the bylaw changes as well. So then we take it through that process.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Not seeing any, okay. So now we move on to item number 5, which is the selection of the fiscal year 2021 Measure J Program 15 Claim Form Revision Subcommittee. So this is a similar process, I think, right?
Yeah, so there was lots of discussion as we reviewed the claims for 1920 about potentially revising the claim forms. And so what we decided there was that we would put together a subcommittee to take a look at those claim forms. And I think Fifi's going to take the lead on that, right?
Great.
And then, and I know Rashida's not here, but I know she was interested in being on that subcommittee.
Okay. I'll
So-
be on it.
Okay.
Anybody else interested in being on it? Okay, the 3's enough, right?
Yeah.
With especially, wait a minute, Rashida?
I think it would be good if we got one of the city operators to be on it as well, since they may have different, we want to make sure that they're an understanding and can accommodate any reporting requirements.
Okay. Is there one who will volunteer? Is that you, Lori?
Well, how often would that committee have to meet?
Once or twice?
Yeah, once or twice.
For the year?
Yeah,
Once or twice,
just once or
period,
twice.
ever.
Just once or twice.
Okay. I can commit to that.
Okay.
No,
But what's the usual time? Can I ask about that? Because we're just so inundated with so much.
It would just be up to the group to
people
figure
do,
out what time, I
if
think.
people do their homework ahead of time and read, so that they can think about what issues came up for them or what do they think would provide better information, things like that.
Can we also appoint an alternate in our place in the
Yeah.
event that I can't? Okay. Okay, so I can commit to that. If I don't have to be the person, if I can have someone else from the city that can kind of step in.
You would
that
want
work?
to make sure that person's aware of, the statistics that you collect and things
Right.
like that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So
So it's about what works or doesn't work for you as a city.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, and this one probably, since we already said the other one could be right before the meeting, we can't also put this one right before the meeting. So the other one then will be right before the next meeting. And this one could be, why don't we figure out that?
Yeah, we'll just figure it out. We'll
we'll
figure
do it
out when
offline.
people can get together. We'll do it offline.
Okay, sounds good. And is there anyone else dying to be on this committee? Okay, not seeing anybody. You can always change your mind. Okay, then with that, we will move on to the update on the development of a draft transportation expenditure plan, otherwise known as the TEP, for Contra Costa County. You're going to do that one, Peter?
I will.
Thank
and then you
you.
can jump in since you are intimately familiar with what's gone on to date. So the draft TEP is in your packet, starting on page 2 I don't know what, right after the summary of actions. This draft TEP was adopted by our board last month, which doesn't mean it's been put on the ballot, but it's kind of the first step in putting it on the ballot for approval by the voters. The process right now is that the CCTA staff is going around to all the cities, getting their approval. The ordinance on this requires the majority of the cities that represent the majority of the population in the county to approve the draft TEP. Once that occurs, it goes to the Board of Supervisors. They also will approve the TEP, and then it's up to them to, by resolution, put it on the March ballot. So they would also then vote to send it to the Department of Elections and put it on the March ballot. So The ordinance would also include, and the ordinance, I believe, is going to our board this week for approval, and that would also include the ballot language. So you, Fifi, put at your spot on the dais there a list of the cities and when we will be giving the presentation to the various cities. So we would hope as citizens that you would, if you're able to, go to those cities and provide any comment towards the TEP that you wish. And we've gone to one city so far, and that is City of Hercules, which approved it at a 5-0 vote. So there was unanimous approval from Hercules. And tomorrow night there will be we will be in Clayton to get their approval. So let's see, and also tomorrow night Walnut Creek. I'm looking here at 9:17. So our executive director, Randy, will be at Clayton, and Tim Hale, our deputy executive director of projects, will be at Walnut Creek. So again, you now have the list of all the cities and when the presentations will be occurring. What this means for interest of the PCC is there's a 5% of the funds on an annual basis will be going to accessible transportation, so that's transportations for seniors and people with disabilities. And I can't remember off the top of my head in today's dollars what that means, but it's, is it in here? Do you know? The dollar amount? I think it might be. Let me see if I can find it real quick. So that's the update on the TEP. I'd be happy to answer any questions. It was a significant process that we went through. There was support from the environmental community, the sustainability community. We believe all the cities, although we'll know for sure once we get the vote on the approval of this. But there was a lot of support throughout all the different jurisdictions for this. And
Any
Janet,
questions?
feel free to.
Lori? Oh, I'm sorry, not Lori. It's Mary, right?
Mary.
I can,
So, Peter, if we went to a city council meeting, what might we say?
I am not able to tell you that at this point. As staff, I can only provide the facts of what's in the TEP. So it would be up to you, and you would just be doing as a citizen. I don't think you can do it as a member of the PCC because the PCC has not taken action on this. So, if you support the TEP and you want the city councils to support the TEP, you would just make a public comment to that. If you don't support the TEP, then you would make a public comment to that.
Peter, sorry.
go ahead.
Peter, I've been attending the WICTEC meetings, and so I'm a little bit familiar with the TEP and the fact that they're taking this to the various jurisdictions and agencies for approval. I just wanted to know, in terms of any fees, what does that mean to? Is it it's a measure where it's a tax measure to the residents? Is that
Yeah, so it's a half-cent sales tax.
half-cent sales tax?
So,
okay. So what does that mean for paratransit operators and for those who are offering transit services for our disabled and senior population?
So
how much of that will go to?
Yeah, so 5% of the total would be given into that program for. So I was trying to find real quick here that what the dollar amount. Oh, there it is.
And then the type of services under that program with the 5%. The 5% would be divided amongst the various agencies, and I'm
Correct.
sure.
So accessible transportation for seniors and veterans and people with disabilities would be $180 million over the 30 years. 30 year or 35 years now. That was one of the things they changed. Janet, did they change it to 35? They changed it from 30 to 35 or 25 to 30. Guess I should know that.
I could be wrong, but I think it's from 25 to 30.
Yeah, that's what I think it is too. So a third.
And there is a period of overlap.
Yes, and so Measure J does not end. Measure J will continue until 2034 as approved by the voters. And then this would start, the taxes would start, if it's approved, by a 67%, 66.6% approval by the voters. It's 2/3. The taxes would start to be collected in July of 2020. And so then.
How soon can we use those funds?
And then, so we'll get into that in the next item.
Oh, sorry.
How that works. But, so the total revenue from the measure is approximately is estimated to be $3.6 billion. And it is used over a variety of projects. And the operating projects like Paratransit and Transit get a specific percentage of that every year. So that $3.6 billion is in today's dollars. So of course there will be inflation, as the years go on. So on an inflated basis, it would be more than that. As an example of revenues, typically right now under Measure J, which is also a half cent, we get there's about $91 million, $91 million per year. Doesn't sound right. $91 million per year. I'm confusing myself. And so, 5% of that, $91 million, is a pretty significant amount of money on an annual basis that goes to the program.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
I'm looking at this accessible transportation for seniors, and then you've got provide convenient and reliable transit services in the central, east, and southwest Contra Costa counties. My interest is included in this. Will there be consideration for increasing the services, say in the Antioch area, taking a look at these zone designations that prevent them from serving certain zoned areas on the weekend? And I'm told that the reason they have the zoned is because of the amount of money that's allocated.
Yeah, so it could be. So the money, and it's looking here for that increased bus. Well, there's two categories for bus services, just so folks in West County understand. There's increased bus service and reliability in West Contra Costa, and then provide convenient and reliable transit services in Central East. So basically the rest of the county, Central East and Southwest County. And what's going to happen is there's going to be an integrated transit plan that's done, and it's going to be done with all the operators on board, and they're going to look at, and basically that study is going to determine how these funds are spent, and they're going to be spent in ways that are going to help improve ridership and make service more efficient and effective to people. So that would be the opportunity for people in areas like you're talking about to work with, if it's East County, Tri-Delta Transit, to come to the table and make sure that that's in a priority that comes out of the integrated transit plan to make sure those areas are served on weekends.
However,
primarily
there
what you're
is
looking
one underlying thing about it. That is to say, the split between the regions is fixed already.
That's right.
I don't know if did you say that? I'm not sure. But what that means is we can't move money, say, from West County into East County, from East County into Central County. All of that is already determined
Right.
By population and by population.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there will be a certain amount of money kind of designated for East County. It's just how that money is spent, and we're making it very clear that money needs to be spent to improve service and increase ridership and reduce vehicle miles traveled.
And also the percent for paratransit can't be moved into
Correct.
some
Correct.
other.
Correct. So the
thing.
paratransit
But it's
funding
within
source,
paratransit,
that
it could
5% is completely separate from regular bus service, from fixed route bus service.
Okay, so what I need to know then is how do we start this conversation to ensure that it gets into the discussion when plans are drawn and money is beginning to be allocated?
So you need to start with Tri-Delta Transit. If you're talking about fixed route service or service that's not part of the dial-a-ride side of what they're doing, because I'm not sure.
No, I'm talking about dollar-ride services only.
Okay.
Dollar-ride, as it stands now, does not go into certain zones on weekends, specifically Sundays and holidays, and it's because of funding.
Okay.
And I want to know, can we include this in this TEP so that funds can be allocated so that they can increase the ridership?
Yeah, so the TEP is setting up a way to, it's determining the amount of money, and it's setting up a way to decide through another planning, a more detailed planning process exactly how the funds will be spent in that category. So for the dollar-ride service, we're doing an accessible transportation study, which is the next item on the agenda. So it's going to be similar. The integrated transit plan is going to be on the fixed route side, and then we've got the accessible transportation study, which is already underway, which will be on the accessible transit side. So that's where you're going to want to talk. And I say it's already underway. It's just starting. There's going to be a significant amount of public outreach, and again, I'll talk about it on the next item. Okay. And that's where you'll have the opportunity to, build a need or build a voice for that type of service.
So one way he and everyone else here will be able to find out about that is at the time that study begins, we'll be talking about it at this committee, right?
Yeah, but I would encourage you to participate when there's outreach in East County as part of the study, to be present and provide comments at that point.
But won't that be part of that?
Yes, it'll be part of that study.
It won't be now.
It's not right now, no.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Correct. That's the appropriate place to give information or to request, that funding be used for that type of service or those services. And we'll make sure through this committee that information is out to you when those outreach efforts are going to occur. And Tri-Delta will know when those outreach efforts are going to occur. They haven't been scheduled yet. But when they are scheduled, there'll be plenty of information given out as to how you can comment on that. And it won't be a meeting you have to go to. There'll be opportunity either online or through a telephone town hall or a comment, somehow making comments directly to Tri-Delta Transit that will all be taken into account.
But it won't happen unless the measure passes.
So the ATS study is funded separately than the measure.
Oh, it is?
So we got a grant from Caltrans to do that. So it's going forward right now either way.
So
the next agenda item is about the accessible transportation study. So I can
what
talk
I'm a little
more about
confused there is how do we, when we specified in Measure J how the money would be used, we can't change that easily.
That's right. So
what would be the meaning of doing a study?
So
if the measure didn't pass?
There was just a desire to go ahead and do the study in advance of the measure, hoping that some funding, if it's not measure funds, then some other funds, if funds become available to support accessible transportation, that we would have a study in place, a plan in place on how best to move forward with those different services.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from anyone?
Madam Chair, I'm kind of confused now. This TEP, are we talking about new funds? Or are we talking about funds that have already been approved, but now you're planning on how you're going to distribute those?
I'll let
funds?
Peter answer that.
These are new
since-
funds.
Then if they're new funds, then I don't understand your question, Madam Chair.
If the measure doesn't pass, there are no new funds.
Oh, well, okay. That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, there will still be Measure J funds though, but then Measure
And
J
it-
will end, and unless a new measure passes, there will be.
And it was the Measure J funds that you can't use for other, you can't transfer.
When I
those
made my
funds.
comment, yeah, Measure J designates how Measure J funds can be
to be
used. So we couldn't
That's
do a
right.
study and come up with some new things and then say, well, that's how we're going to do it.
That's right, unless current operators, through the study, find ways to potentially, if they want to, fund some of the new things that are identified in the study, then they could do that, as long as they're, continue to provide. So the whole purpose of the accessible transportation study is to look at the system as a whole and make sure that the services that are provided are people, I can't think of the right word to use, but are actually services that will benefit the riders and improve the service out there from the rider's perspective. So more user-friendly, for instance. So it could be that some programs are identified in the ATS that Measure J funds could be used for, but the way the Measure J funds are distributed right now, they're distributed to the operators. That's how it's identified in the expenditure plan, with no real guidance other than they have to be used for senior disabled service. No real guidance beyond that as to specifically what service. So the ATS, Accessible Transportation Study, could provide some ideas that they would want to implement using Measure J funds.
Within the confines of the operators
Yes.
providing the service.
Right.
Yeah, I would think. Anybody else? Shall we move on? Okay. I'm a little, let's see. So have we talked about item number 7, update on the status of the accessible transportation strategy?
Yeah, I can give a little bit more information.
Okay, I know we've just in the, sort of through the back door talked about it.
Yeah, so the Accessible Transportation Strategic Plan, which is the study we were talking about, we have a consultant on board. It's Nelson Nygaard. They have started work on that study. Right now, we're just in the very preliminary things like identifying kind of the oversight committees and who's going to, keep an eye on the plan as it goes along. And I think, Janet can agree there was a lot of discussion by our board during the TEP process. This study was talked about significantly. The need for these funds was talked about significantly. So there's going to be what we're proposing and have proposed is a policy oversight committee of electeds that kind of keep an eye on this planning process. And so there's going to be, and our board approved kind of not the individual people, but the agency. So all the transit operators will have a board member that participates in that. The authority will have a board member that participates. The county will have a board of supervisors person that participates. So there is going to be a technical advisory committee and a policy oversight committee that keeps the consultant on track and making sure that all of the aspects of the study are carried out. A significant part of the study is going to be public outreach, like I said, where we go out into the communities to community events and get feedback, survey work to get information from users of the different services, whether they be ADA paratransit, non-ADA service for seniors, maybe faith-based services that already exist. Just get feedback from seniors and people with disabilities as to how the current system works and how it can be improved in their opinion. So there's one of the major things is a significant amount of public outreach for this. So you'll all hear, and we'll be sure and let you know well in advance of when those events are scheduled, or if there are already events scheduled in the community, what those are, where we will be, with a table gathering information or something like that. So that study is anticipated to be completed by December of 2020. And so that would then help guide how, if the new measure does pass in March, how those funds are spent, on which projects those funds are spent.
So the activities and populations that would be, whose opinion we would be asking, would it be the users of, would it be the disabled and senior community itself, as opposed to some other group?
Yeah.
Okay, so it would be limited to the
It'll be both. It'll be individual seniors and people with disabilities, as well as agencies that represent or provide services to people with transportation services. So it's going to be the whole gamut of community.
Will it flag, excuse me, those groups as being either a user group or a service
Yes.
group?
Yes.
I don't know if that's
So
the right word. But
I understand what you're saying. It'll list out where the information's coming from, whether it's individual users or maybe users that provided information in a group setting, or an agency and what that agency is and how they're related to transportation for people with disabilities or seniors.
okay,
So it'll be flagged in the information that's provided as to what the motivation was of their comments.
right, because I think it's substantially different that if the person actually uses the service or if they want to be paid to provide the service. Right? That's what I'm trying. So getting those two things separated out, it seems to me, would be meaningful to do. Okay. Is there anything else? Does anybody else have a comment on this?
I just have a question, I guess. So Peter,
Okay.
During you said that, I guess by the end of this year, this calendar year, that's when all the outreach would have been done by this.
No, the outreach hasn't been scheduled yet. So
what happens at the end of this calendar year? I thought you said there's
nothing. The end of December 2020 is when the study's supposed to be done.
It's supposed to be done, completed?
Yeah, 2020, not 2019.
Oh, 2020. I'm thinking, okay.
For some reason, it's really confusing.
I'm ahead of
right now
myself.
that way.
So without micromanaging the consultant that's doing this, can we get regular updates on what's going on with the outreach, just to kind of figure out? Just
Absolutely.
Kind of see,
we'll have the item at every PCC meeting.
Yeah, just to kind of see who is actually participating. From our disabled community and from our senior community, those number of participants, and if they're really low, how we can actually attract more during this process, so that when we get to December 2020, the real December 2020, we don't have a problem with there not being enough participants.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And I guess I'm a little bit worried that it'll look like our own roster, which is we have a lot, what I would call, relatively speaking anyway, lots of participation from different agencies and hardly any from consumers. So we need to, and that's not to knock a single agency person who's here. Actually, I'd rather thank you very much for your time. But what we're not getting at is the consumer side of it. And so if we can't even, what worries me is that if we can't even get people to be on this committee, we don't seem to have the mechanism very well to do that, then how are we going to provide all that input that would direct what consumers theoretically want?
So if there was a way to get material that we could each send out to our mailing lists to encourage participation, I see that would be very helpful.
Yes, we will be doing all that. We will be counting on you as providers to help collect information from your riders.
So not all
We will also
groups
just be
are
going
represented
to
that way.
Right. We'll also be going to events, senior centers, meetings associated with the disabled community, developmental disabled meetings where the clients are there and soliciting feedback from them, not associated with any particular operator. Just what are their transportation mobility needs in general, not necessarily, from AC Transit or Richmond or Lumber and Desperavan, but just the population in general.
So, for example, AC Transit and BART and East Bay Paratransit, and I'm just talking about the ones in my area, but I know there's also one in Central County, and I just don't know enough information to know about East County, but we all have user groups that are pretty much made up of real users. So by what you said, it sounds like you would not include those very real users of the systems. So
No, I didn't say that.
Okay, so I would hope that
We will outreach to both existing users of existing services as well as go outside that to people with disabilities and seniors who may ride all of the services, but we would reach out to them outside of through the particular service to get their input. So I don't know if that makes sense.
I know what you're trying to say. I'm not sure how one would. I think it's a thing to be worked on how one would do that. I can't tell necessarily whose hand it is that's up. I'm sorry.
If it helps at all, I remember when we went through the process of putting together or voting on whether or not we were going to have this study. And if I'm not mistaken, in that study, it was also a preliminary rollout of what the outreach plan would look like. So the in-person, the via email, the online, those kinds of things. If it helps, maybe at the next meeting, a sample of, or actually that section from the study may be valuable in trying to help people to understand how the outreach plan will happen. Okay.
Okay. Do we have anything to add on this topic? The one thing I would say is it sounds like it would be a good idea to have this on our next agenda. Is that true?
We'll put updates on all the meetings coming up until the study's done.
Pardon?
Until the study's done, we'll be doing an update like this at every meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you. So now we're ready for item. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Mary?
I just wanted to make sure everybody here knew that at those meetings where we could give input, that there was a big turnout from the non-traditional transportation community, so that in the TEP there is language to support funding for both traditional and non-traditional transportation programs.
I hear what you're saying. I'm trying to relate it to this agenda item. Does it? I think.
We were talking about the accessible strategic transportation plan
Right.
and study, and the TEP, so I thought it fit.
Right. I think what I at least was addressing is the fact that the disabled, really what I'm thinking is the disabled community has been completely left out of a lot of this. So I would like to see that they are included. Anyway, so I think we're done with this item, right, for now?
Can I just ask one question? I'm sorry to have this drag on.
Lori?
So can I just hear just some of the reasons as to why you feel the disabled community has been left out and how? I just want to know so that we can make sure that
Because I know nobody.
that they're included next time.
I think it's because.
It's very comfortable.
Oh, why?
Uh-huh.
I'm not talking about what
What-
you were saying. I was talking about what Mary was saying.
No, but you made a statement that you think that the disabled community has been left out, and I wanted to know.
Oh, why have they been left out?
Yeah, what do you think that?
What
do you think
what
they've
would
been
be
left
the solution?
out? No, what do you think from your experience or from things that you're hearing? What do you think is not being accomplished for the disabled community?
Access.
Accessibility primarily. That's the main thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when alternatives are provided where a person in a wheelchair is left out, yeah.
So I
that's an
concur
example.
that as we move forward with this plan, Peter, that we should make sure that while we have the opportunity to do this, that we really do look hard at this disabled community for things that we've not covered or tried to cover in the past, that we really do meet those conditions.
Okay, ready for item number 8 then? Okay, so that's City of Richmond's our transit update. Do you have an update, Lori?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much for allowing me this opportunity. So the City of Richmond, we've been now running the Paratransit Lift program for a couple of months now. And in the months of July and August, we had a total of 599 rides so far, 98 in July and 501 in August. We have over 100 participants that have signed up. In fact, 101 to be exact, counting to date, that have signed up for the Lift program. They are seniors who are and disabled persons who are calling us every single day, very excited. In fact, I received quite a few calls last week with participants who have said that they are so happy that this program is in place, that it really has made a difference in their lives. Former council member Vinay Pimplay, who used to be one of our city council members, he's blind, and he called me personally to tell me that this has made a remarkable difference in his life for being a part of this program. So I say all that to say that we are very excited about how this has transitioned. It's kind of up in the air at first in terms of how all of this was going to roll out. Thanks to this committee for supporting the City of Richmond and having faith in this program or this venture that we started off on. I will say that this is still new. We're still trying different things. We haven't had to do anything differently, really, because everybody loves it so much. We are continuing with our existing paratransit service to include serving ambulatory and non-ambulatory clients. We've just contracted, or will be contracting out soon, with a service provider to assist us with our Monday through Friday, our everyday activities for ambulatory and non-ambulatory, because we don't have enough staff to cover, the additional patrons who would not wish to take Lyft. I don't know who those are now because they're all interested for those who can ride. But we, since we do only have 2 full-time drivers, and for a city the size of Richmond, to be exact, maybe about 104,000 residents. Not that we're going to have that many who need paratransit, but even if we had a portion of that, 2 drivers could not cover that. So this is our reasons or rationale for contracting out with a transit service provider. But we've been very pleased with it. We have community-based organizations that we have recently contracted out with. In fact, they just commenced work last week. And they're going to be our to-go persons really in the community. Those, the 3 community-based organizations will be performing a lot of outreach, marketing, travel training, working with different agencies and local businesses and community neighborhood councils, just kind of finding out where the seniors and disabled persons are, whether they're working with, doctors' offices, hospitals, wherever this population is found. They're going to reach out to them. They're going to give them information about the LIFT program, about our paratransit services. And so as time goes on, since this is an ongoing process that I have to report on, I will definitely let you know how those numbers are increasing and how that's really making a difference for the Richmond community. So that's all I have to report today. But thank you very much for all of your support. And I'm just excited about having the program in place and that we're able to serve both of these populations.
Are there any questions, Michael?
Well, it's not a question, but if I can, through the chair, Lori,
Comments?
having sat on the committees and things, I am just so impressed with the hard work that you've done. But also, I have personally learned it's not a simple issue. It's not just simply you doing your job to do this. You have to work with the city of Richmond. You have to work with, voters. You have to work with all kinds of different people. And I'm learning, just being a consumer, I'm learning a lot about the politics about how this works.
Well, thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. And I really want this to be a pilot program for other agencies and cities to look at, and hopefully they can be just as successful as Richmond is so far, and maybe it could be something that we can expand and connect across the region. I'm hoping we all need that. So I'm hoping that this would be something that will extend to something far greater for everyone. But again, I want to thank you all for your support and just trusting and believing in Richmond. It was a long uphill battle, but I thank you for your patience.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, right here.
Abdullah?
Yeah. I'd like to ask Lori, July to August, 98 to 501, that's a big bump. How did you do that?
I think it was primarily a result of our connecting with the community. We have regularly scheduled travel training and information for our seniors. We meet with them at the senior center. We've been scheduling those meetings. We've had 4 of them so far. And in July, that was one of our biggest meetings. Before it was like word of mouth. And in July is when we had our first workshop to really talk to the seniors about the LIFT program. And so we had the riderships at 98 in July. But after we had that first workshop, ridership jumped up to, for LIFT, jumped up to 501 patrons in August.
So you did. You guys got out of the office and you went to them.
Yes, we have scheduled workshops, and we will continue to have these scheduled workshops. In fact, we're going to increase them now that we have the community-based organizations. We've trained them, and they're going to go out and do a lot of these travel training, informational type meetings and workshops to work one-on-one. We have one-on-one sessions too. We just don't do the group sessions. If someone feels more comfortable in a one-on-one setting, we've also scheduled those. But for the most part, the seniors have been informed of the workshop dates and they've attended them, and I think it really is something that they've been really enjoying because they get that one-on-one at the workshops. LIFT has been present at these workshops as well. They won't be present in future ones. They just go through a few with us to kind of train us. But they've been really productive workshops. The seniors have, and the disabled persons there have been really, really very interested. They can get their questions answered, whatever questions they have at that workshop. They actually have attendants going around assisting them with their smartphone, actually showing them how to, download the app and use the app. And it's just a really informational session for them that I think that if you're sitting from the comforts of your home and trying to learn it with through a family member or someone else or even on your own, it's more challenging because we have a lot of attendance at these workshops, and I think that that's made a difference. And I get calls every day from from our patrons asking when is the next workshop and when can they sign up for Lyft. So very happy. I think that's what caused the numbers to increase, the workshops primarily. You're welcome.
Mary?
My question to you is, will it get to the point that it's so well used that somebody's upset about how much it costs?
At this point, I don't think so. I think that the cost is what we said it would be. Within our travel location or the area that we serve, the city covers up to $17 for one-way trips. Now it doesn't even get to that point. Most of the area that we cover, the seniors who travel within that service area don't pay any more than about $3, no more than $4 one way. So they're really happy about that because our previous service without Lyft was about $4 one way. And it wasn't available 24/7. They can take this now that they have Lyft and they can use Lyft. They can go. A lot of them wanted to attend church on Sundays. Now they can go to church. They can go shopping. They can come to city council members for those who really want to do that meetings. But believe it or not, some of them do take Lyft to their the city council meetings. I have colleagues that I work with that are 55 and older, because you have to be at least 55 and older to qualify as a senior. And I mean, they are telling me every day, thank you for the program, thank you, and telling me their use of it and how they've been able to utilize Lyft to get pretty much all around the Bay Area. Even though it only covers our service area, they can connect more readily and easily to maybe BART or AC Transit to kind of get to their next destination, and they love it. So,
I think the other part of that, as far as how much it costs, is keep in mind that they're paying a maximum of $17 for a trip.
The city?
Yeah, whereas before, your trips that were $80, $90 a trip. So there's a significant cost savings and more convenience to the people that are taking advantage of this. So, but then,
if I can add, Peter, I was even saying that I need to be a Richmond resident. I don't live in Richmond, but I wish I was now. I wish I did.
Well, you need to be a senior too.
Well, I fit that category.
That's going to be a long time for you, right, Lori?
I was going to ask Lori, so your program runs that the person has to have a smartphone. So as you're taking intake on people and signing them up, are you keeping track of people who have smartphones? And obviously they need to have a smartphone to be part of the project, but keeping track of people that don't have smartphones. And then also you're referring them to that other program where they can get smartphones. How many people are? So I guess what I'm looking for is it's good to know as you introduce this program for information for other people that the smartphone thing was not really an issue, because if people didn't, there was a few, the number that didn't have it was fairly small, and then they were able to get smartphones through this other program type of thing.
What I'm finding from the workshops that we have conducted so far is that people don't even seem to even have an issue with getting a smartphone if they don't have one. They're ready to get one if they don't have one. But most of our seniors, ironically, who attend the meetings have one. And so, I think that's one reason, that's why we're going to do the outreach through our community-based organizations. We want to find out that population, number one, who don't know about Lyft, who don't know about a paratransit service. We want to tap into that population of disabled and seniors who qualify for either our paratransit service or the Lyft program. And then we want to find out, if you qualify for the Lyft program, if you don't have all of the accessible tools that you need, how we assist you if you're low enough income to be able to get these resources so that you can be able to have sign up and use the service.
So are you keeping track of the non-senior disabled people?
The non-seniors?
Yeah, the non-senior.
You mean the disabled part, the disabled
The non-senior,
persons?
maybe I'm not saying that right. The non-senior disabled.
Well, okay, so the disabled persons are either disabled 18 and older, because you would qualify if you're 18 and older and you have all the proof of showing that you fit that category for disability. And yes, we do have that tracking system once individuals do sign up to take left.
I mean,
Now,
I'm wondering about what happens to the people who can't use the system because it's Lyft, for example.
well, as I mentioned earlier, we still have our transit program in place, the Paratransit service.
So can you speak to your statistics there?
Well, I don't have those available on me for either one. I'm just giving you information about the Lyft program because that's what they wanted today. But in terms of the Paratransit service, we do have a tracking system for all of our patrons, whether they are ambulatory, non-ambulatory, through Route Match. And we intend to go out and find more in the disability community so that we make sure we serve that community, that population as well. And this is one reason as to, for all the months we've been talking about this is one reason as to why we have decided that we would keep our existing service for ambulatory and non-ambulatory in place and contract out to a service provider to provide those ambulatory, non-ambulatory rights. Now, from the way I have been seeing the numbers increase for non-ambulatory patrons, these are the non-wheelchair riders, or the the non-disabled. Okay, the way I've been seeing the Lyft program, the patrons increase for the Lyft program, the clients that we serve, because there are some clients who are in a wheelchair. I've heard this recently as last week. There are clients in non-power wheelchairs who have assistants who have taken Lyft, and they're signing up.
Non-powered?
In non-power wheelchairs, they're using Lyft. And we don't exclude anyone who can use it if a wheelchair can fit in that vehicle. There have been some wheelchair riders who have taken Lyft. Now, for the power wheelchairs, it's a different type of scenario where we have to have a certain bus or a certain vehicle. So, to answer your question in short, we're working with our once we hire our firm, the firm that's going to assist the city with the paratransit program. I'm hoping that we would get more disabled clients because I think that the non-disabled are the ones who are really taking Lyft more. So we'll have the ability to serve more disabled clients who have power wheelchairs particularly.
But you're not keeping track of that.
Well, that is, we have that through a recording system through Route Match. Route Match records all of anytime there's a scheduled ride, that system picks up who our non-ambulatory and ambulatory riders are. We're not excluding anyone who wants to take it, whether you're disabled or not. Anyone can use the service, but it seems like more people are interested in using Lyft. And I can see that. You call, you don't have to do a pre-scheduled appointment. You can call in a matter of minutes. Your ride is there. If a senior wakes up and they don't feel good that day and they had a scheduled appointment, they don't have to call our service area, or call our staff and say, well, I need to cancel, or then you have to meet certain conditions for that counseling ahead of time. It's just such a burden, but
maybe that could be made less burden.
So the reason I bring that up is because it's more of a burden when a client has to do that. Oh, I don't feel good that you have to schedule
but I'm thinking about it
cancel.
From the point of view of a person who has no choice.
No, well, that's what I want to get to. I want to get to that. So I'm thinking that with having this population that Lyft is able to serve, we're able to put more attention at the city staff level on our disabled population.
So are you?
And maybe we can. Yeah, well, that's what we want to get to. I mean, this is all new, and we're still just started the program. But I'm just saying that's something I want to be able to do. Really focus in on the disabled population to make it more convenient for them and I'll
Really,
be.
you mean people in power wheelchairs?
Well, whether it could
Correct.
be, you could be blind in a power wheelchair, whatever the case may be, whatever restrictions you may have that's causing your travel not to be so convenient. So we want
Lyft
to.
denies rides to people in
Well, we
power
want to.
wheelchairs.
I think that through this program, we're not going to be able to deny any ride, and that's the luxury of it. And that we'll be able to probably have with the assistance of our firm that we're going to contract out with. That's going to help us not to deny any rides. Remember, I mentioned earlier when we have 2 drivers. It's easy to deny rides when you have
You're
2
talking
drivers.
about in the
City's paratransit
city
service.
one.
Having 2 drivers, it's easy to deny rides when you only have 2 drivers. But if you have contracted out with a firm that has 10 or 12 drivers, it's easier to say, no, we're not going to deny this ride to a person who
Help
you know,
is to
has to use our program.
if you only have
Our
2
service.
drivers to let the people in the power chairs use those time slots because they don't have a choice about a ride. And the other thing is to make sure that when things are advertised, it gets advertised to that community also.
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons, Janet, for our community-based organizations, they're going to be doing a lot around marketing and advertising and outreach. And I'll be coming back, hopefully, in our next meeting to report maybe some numbers, if that's, since you seem to be interested in that, on how we're able to really serve our disabled population more effectively.
Place I just was sort of thinking about, it's like how to make this better, is a place to advertise stuff like that would be a place where you get a wheelchair fixed. May sound like a silly one, but it's kind of the one place that people in powered wheelchairs always.
Well, we just did a contract with AC Transit in the city of Richmond. We're doing a partnership, and I was just recently contacted in the last several months about advertising on their buses. So that's part of our partnership amongst a lot of other things that we're going to be doing.
Right, but I'm talking about wheelchair repair stores, for example, Wheelchairs of Berkeley.
That's one of many things. I mean, this can go on and on. You and I can have a sidebar conversation for some of your suggestions, because what I will do is I will take that information back to our community-based organizations, and that would be something that they can be, one of the areas that they can kind of outreach for. So those are some good suggestions. And what I would also like to do is have them set up a meeting with you. They're going to be attending some of the West Mobility Management meetings. I think the West County Mobility Management meetings, senior mobility meetings. The one that Joan Carpenter, she's the facilitator of that meeting.
I think I know it's a senior group, I think.
Yes. So our community-based organizations will be attending those meetings, and so
She's
they'll
actually retiring.
I know she is,
Yeah.
but they're going to still attend. The meetings will still go on. So
Yeah, I don't think it's what I'm talking about is was where wheelchair. If you're in a power wheelchair, where do you go? And one of the places you unfortunately have to go is the repair store.
No, but I mentioned the senior mobility meeting because in those meetings, a lot of this information comes out about where to go, how we outreach, what do we do to assist with the
I'll just
disabled
move on.
population. But so I just wanted to say that in closing, I would just say that I have a desire to want to ensure that our disabled population has the convenience of traveling, like just as the ones who are non-disabled, and we're trying to get there. And so I think one way that will help the city of Richmond get there is by having this other service with Lyft to take care of this population that needs to get to their location, so we can focus more on the disabled population and our disabled clients for getting them around more conveniently.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help?
whatever, you know.
Okay.
Thank you for your report.
I think Michael had a question.
I don't want this to be misconstrued as a criticism of anybody, but I'm going to deal with the issue of smartphone access. There are those of us that don't have smartphones for reasons other than not wanting to have a smartphone, security being one of them. And also the fact that usually the smartphone access is means tested. And for those of us in my income bracket, because I'm a retired teacher and I have a fairly decent retirement income coming in, that I would not be eligible to get a smartphone under these programs because I'm above, whatever the levels are. But I just want to bring it up because more and more Tri-Delta has the same thing going on with the T-shirt that I'm wearing. I can't use the system that I'm advertising for them because I don't have a smartphone. I don't have a smartphone because I'm concerned about security. I'm concerned about internet hacking. I'm concerned about issues that I think a lot of people aren't really realizing are possibilities. And so, like I said, it's not a criticism, but I think these programs in the future are going to need to have, even though I realize that most people do want to get a smartphone and do want to access via smartphone, that there be another portal available for people to be able to use these programs.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll move along. We're about out of time. The next item is the Service Review Advisory Committee report, and interesting birthdays because they met on my birthday. And that's where I was. And one of the things they talked about was an update on East Bay Paratransit's emergency operations plan and safety plan. So East Bay Paratransit has done a very significant study on emergency operations connected to various other agencies in their operating area. And so they have a very elaborate plan in place on how to deal with significant emergencies, things like, in the one we're thinking about probably these days, a big fire, something like that. And so they are keeping that going, and I thought it was, in addition to being on the calendar of that organization, it was a thing that was particularly of interest to a group like this. And I'm not sure, Peter, if there's a way or if it's even meaningful to bring it up in the context of what East Bay Paratransit does, and it has to do with partly with the use of its vehicles during a big emergency. And I don't know if that's ever come up in Contra Costa County per se or not. Do you know?
I know that all of our operators participate in exercises, tabletop exercises, as well as other tests, and they all have policies associated with how their vehicles could be used in the event of an emergency. So it is something that we could have them individually talk about at a meeting, if that's the preference of the group or of interest to everybody.
In that? Okay. I think it would, yeah, it sounds like it. Okay, maybe one at a time over the next several times.
It might be more comprehensive if we just
Altogether?
had all of them give
Okay.
5 or 10 minutes each, or 2 or 3 minutes
Okay.
each, on what their policies are and how they participate in emergency preparedness.
Okay. I don't know if it's meaningful or not. I'll just mention it. There are a lot of materials that could be given out, say at a meeting like that I actually know how to obtain, that would not, not cost anything other than maybe reproducing things like instructions on how to get supplies and stuff for a big emergency. I don't know if anyone's interested or if this is the right forum in connection with that other one. I can actually go either way on that, but
I'm not sure if I had mentioned this earlier, but I went up to Paradise because my parents live in Chico, and I had a chance, on behalf of Tri-Delta. It wasn't an official investigation, but I went up and I went through Paradise on the city buses, and I talked to the drivers, and some of the paratransit drivers were actually used to evacuate people out of, and that was just something that they did instinctively, naturally. And they were talking about these kids that were at some sort of kids that were autistic and what have you. They just started their program. The driver went back up the hill through the flames, got them, took them back down into the town. So this is a very real situation to get.
It's very real. And in the East Bay Paratransit plan that I was just referring to, that sort of thing would happen in a more organized way. So there are, and there are cities within our county that are giving out for a nominal cost emergency supplies, and so I don't know how overlapping that is to this, but it could be as simple as just I could bring a bunch of those supplies, and we could have them on the back table in the meeting when the operators are presenting their information. That's kind of what I was thinking. Is that something I've figured out how to get them?
And again, mentioning the thing with Paradise was that the ability of the paratransit vehicle drivers, they were a lot more flexible than the fixed route drivers, because the fixed route drivers who were on a schedule, even though they were able to help some people, they were already on their way down the hill. But the paratransit people, they have a division up there in Paradise that was where they parked the paratransit for that zone area. So they were a lot more flexible, and they literally were able to get every single one of those vehicles out of Paradise and back down to the valley so that they were still able to be used.
So what I don't know, Kim, maybe you don't know, but maybe you do, is the East Bay Paratransit plan could be talked about as a plan for AC Transit's service area, right?
So, in a case of an emergency, things are filtered down. So East Bay Paratransit wouldn't make its own decision about where vehicles go. It would have to come down from the county, which disperses AC Transit vehicles, which then disperses East Bay Paratransit vehicles.
But not
so
all.
The emergency plan is really all part of that.
The reason I kind of asked that question is we're not in Alameda County. You said Alameda County, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but we're in Contra Costa.
I hear you, but AC Transit is under the Alameda County emergency. So I'm sorry, it would be the same thing. It's still county-based, right? So it would have to come from the county. We would get the instructions from the county that would then go through AC Transit, then get the instructions to the East Bay Paratransit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
it's all part of that same emergency plan.
So the same thing would happen if there was an emergency in Richmond, for instance. It would just come down through Contra Costa County Office of Emergency Operations
So
to
that
AC
could
Transit.
be explained appropriately as part of this process. It just seemed like, since this actually was on the agenda, so as an update, and I know I went when they were developing it. I know I actually went to some of those meetings, and it was really quite elaborate. I think they did a really good job on it, and I think that it's important for people like the people on this committee to know about things like that. So, okay, so when we have time, preferably before the big one, of course. Okay, so then in addition to that, we elected new officers, and there was a customer service satisfaction survey presented, the results that is, And without having any documentation or the minutes of that meeting in front of me, what I remembered about it, which is probably for this group as good as anything else, is that their customer satisfaction. So what happens is is it year? BART does a customer service satisfaction survey of the paratransit service, and they try to ask the same questions each year so that they're comparing between the years apples and oranges, apples and apples rather, not apples and oranges. And what I remembered is satisfaction was a little bit down, but it wasn't all that. It was not what I would call bad or anything like that either. Would you agree, Kim? You thought it was bad?
I like when numbers are high.
Yes, I do too, but it was
a 10% drop in overall satisfaction based on the numbers from the year before.
So there's that. Those were the most relevant things. I don't think staffing things are probably very interesting to this group. But anyway, that's that report. So are there any questions, or should we move on? We're about out of time. Not seeing any. The Senior Mobility Action Council report is the one?
That's me.
Okay.
So for the past year, we've had different transportation resources come and talk with us about how their system works and what they do and who they serve. And so in September, our meeting is going to be about what we've accomplished and what our goals are for next year. In October, the Concord Naval Weapons Station is going to talk about what's going on with that area. And then we tend to recess in November and December because of the holidays. So we're kind of coming up towards the end of our year and putting together what we've accomplished and how we're going forward for next year.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Okay. With that, future agenda items, we've already identified some things. Do you need more, or I think we have a full agenda, right? But if somebody wanted to bring up something, they could do that, of course, right now, if they're interested. Okay. So then we'll go with the things we've already identified. And then we will have the two subcommittee meetings that were set up meet between now and the next meeting, which is 2 months from now. Okay. And we already know that the one subcommittee will meet right before the meeting, and that's the one that Michael is on. Okay. And is there any news to share? Mary?
It's kind of related back to one of the previous conversations around here about what happens in emergencies. And so yes, the county directs where the buses go, and every transportation provider is supposed to be registered with the county. But when I've been trying to pin down the police department, for example, around are they getting lists of all the disabled and all the seniors, and so that they will be a priority in terms of rescue. What is happening is that the focus is being put back on each person to create their own network of getting out, if that is what is going to be required. Because once any group says, yes, we know where everybody is and they are our priority, then there is the expectation that everybody will be rescued. which is not a reasonable, it's a reasonable desire, but it's not a reasonable accomplishment expectation, if that's making sense. So what the police department, who's kind of in charge of the emergency evacuation business when there is a disaster, what they are really putting out in a strong message is that particularly if you're disabled, particularly if you don't have anybody living with you that can help you, that you need to create within your neighborhood a network of people who will help you in the event that the emergency hits your area. Because once that's a full-blown emergency, nobody will be allowed in to that neighborhood. Your family members will not be allowed in. The vehicles that are registered with the county will be dispersed by the county. So this really puts the onus on each one of us to create a support system within our own neighborhood, to get to know your neighbors on both sides, to share phone numbers, to share your situation, and get some degree of commitment that the people in your neighborhood will help.
Which is easier said than done. Because if you're, for example, in a wheelchair, you can't go up the stairs to your next door neighbor's house and tell them the information that you just shared with us.
Right. Well, there are ways to get information to people around you, but I'm sure when you're in a power chair, it's more difficult. Those vehicles that, well, I don't know if this is, vehicles that can transport people in wheelchairs can be purchased, of course.
What? I'm sorry?
Vehicles that can transport people in wheelchairs can be purchased for about double the cost of a regular vehicle. Well, it cost us, when the Lumber into Spirit bought accessible minivans, they cost $45,000 or $50,000, right? So a typical vehicle new is $20,000 to $25,000 or $15,000 to $25,000. So I'm concerned about this, obviously, and a lady in our area is concerned about how she's going to get her husband out in the event of an emergency. It takes a lot of planning, a lot of communication, a lot of people pulling together, and I'm sure I've said enough.
Okay. I believe we have covered all of the items on the agenda, and except maybe news to share. Do we think we've already kind of done enough news to share? I think we've all contributed. And why don't I just say, meeting is adjourned, and thank you all for coming.